Good. Hello, everyone. We are about to get started. If you have not gotten your coffee or donuts, grab that now. Wonderful. It is 8 o'clock. Thank you for joining us. My name is Addison. I am president of Social Media Breakfast Madison. It is also Forward Fest, if you have not seen that as well. A little bit about us. We are a nonprofit focusing on networking and education around digital marketing. We have meetings every third Wednesday of the month where we have presenters, networking, and a little bit of snacking. We do have a live stream typically that runs on our Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channel. We have opportunities to join our volunteer board or be a volunteer. We have content writers, but then also for our board, we're looking specifically for event coordinators, volunteer coordinator, and then joining us at our monthly events to help greet all of you wonderful folks. We do have a new board member. He is taking our secretary spot. He's sitting right there. This is Dustin. A little bit about Dustin. He is a Badger, so we like him a little bit more. He plants 5 trees for every tax return. He is in the accounting world during the tax season with the National Forest Foundation. Over 4,000 trees planted and continues to keep going. Otherwise, he is a houseplant guy. Well, it's nice that he likes houseplants if he's planting trees. So if you want to say hi to him, he's right there. Hello, Dustin. We want to thank our sponsors. Starting Block is the space that we are currently in. We are going to have all of our monthly events here. True Coffee, delicious coffee is right in back there. And then we have all of our creative partners and in-kinds. Starting Block will probably have Scott at the end of the event if anybody is interested in a tour of the space. It is a co-working space. And then True Coffee, again, special shout out, caffeine for the morning. We love them. We do have to say goodbye to one of our wonderful, wonderful creative in-kind sponsors, Faith, over there. Life is getting a little too busy for her. So unfortunately, she's not able to come in every single month. Can we just get a round of applause? She's done so much. She was on the board and then stayed on as a supporter, and she's going to eternally be a supporter, but we're eternally grateful, Faith. We love you. And Forward Fest event happening all this week. I'm going to have Matt come on up and talk about it a little bit more. It is happening all around Madison. You want to just
all around Madison. Yeah, I'm going to do this too. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? All right. Yeah, this is day 3 of Forward Festival. So you may or may not know. So events like this sometimes coincide and sometimes become part of what's the largest festival for creative professionals and entrepreneurs in the state of Wisconsin. I think last year we had close to 3,000 people and 60 events. This year, I think we're close to 60 events over the 5 days. Forwardfest.org. If you are not familiar with it, who here has been to another Forward Fest event or is planning to go to a Forward Fest event this week? So pretty good number of you. There's still a lot of events on the schedule the next few days. So I'd encourage you to check out the schedule, forwardfest.org, and see what's going on. I will personally be up at the Capitol. Well, I'm going to another event right after this. I got to bounce around a lot this week, but I will also be up at the Capitol Square for the Jazz at 5 event. It's Jazz with VCs. So if you are raising money, you know people are raising money, you want to meet folks that are writing checks into the Wisconsin startup ecosystem, that's the event I'll be at tonight. It's a great event, and it's wonderful music, and hopefully the weather is great and we can just enjoy what's a nice summer tradition. So thank you for the support. Social Media Breakfast has been great to the Forward Fest over the years. Thank you for running events that coincide, and I guess on with the show. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Oh, glasses, sir.
So the problem when you're about that age.
Lots of networking events as well. Specifically, tonight's event is great. I've been many years. We have some events coming up that will be happening. We have our social media marketing awards. Nominations are currently open. So if there's anybody kicking butt in their social or newsletters, we have some categories that you can nominate and help recognize them. We have a networking event then in October on the 21st at Serendipity Labs. And we will then unveil who is the winner. Voting will then take place in September. And then in September, another workshop event. Josh is here. If you are creating content and you are using your phone and you need to take pictures, Josh Van is going to have a workshop here upstairs and show you how to do it just a little bit better, because it's always changing. You want it to look good if you want it to perform. We have our nonprofit spotlight over here. We have Fair Share CSA. Go say hi. They're doing amazing things. Building a resilient food community by investing in farmers and empowering eaters. We're farmland, so it's probably one of the best nonprofits to be working with. They have an event coming up in September, Bike the Barns. So learn about that as well. Again, register for those upcoming events. And then we also have our September event happening the 16th here. Wow, we have a lot of slides this morning. Ethical Trade Co. is a kind sponsor that is giving away gift cards. And if you have registered today, you were entered into the raffle. We have Charles Sprain. You are the winner. Come on down. You want to bring it back, Tim? Keep the show moving. All right. And then obviously, again, volunteer, become part of our board. We're actively looking for sponsors to help support this organization. And if you are a speaker of an expert in any kind of realm with social media, digital marketing, we are looking for our 2027 roster. Connect with us. It's social media. Makes sense. All right. On to the show. Bree, Kat.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Let's see if we
Connect
can
that one.
smoothly
Yep.
transition to the other. Awesome. Let's see if it'll let me.
Oh, there it is. Present up.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Bree Ugalde. I am a senior account executive at Hebing. We're an integrated marketing agency based here in Madison, Wisconsin, as well as Austin, Texas. And I primarily focus on social content strategy. So I've had the privilege of working across a multitude of brands such as Culver's, ABC Supply Co., Impro Corporation, along with various others. But before we get started, I'll let Kat introduce herself as well.
Yes, so my name is Kat Graham. I am a PR, social media, and content account executive at Hebing as well. I work across social media, content strategy, and public relations, helping clients like ABC Supply, Impro Corporation, and ITW Welding connect with their audiences through everything.
Yeah, project a little bit.
Project. Helping their audience connect with them through everything from long form writing to social content strategy and creative execution.
Awesome. So together we're going to be walking through Tapping into Trends, a step-by-step guide to assessing trend relevance and brand fit. So one thing that we've both learned from working across a variety of brands is just that trends can create as much pressure as they can excitement. So overall, it feels like every new cultural moment demands a brand to react quickly. So today's session is all going to be about slowing that down and making that decision a little bit more of an intentional process. So we're going to be sharing a framework for evaluating trend relevance, brand fit, and timing so that you know when exactly to step in at the right moment and when you might need to sit one out. So overall, brands aren't driving culture anymore. People are. So culture is shaped by conversations, communities, and content audiences create every day. So a well-executed trend response shows that a brand is listening and participating in that conversation. That can also build relevance and connection, but audiences are quick to spot when something feels inauthentic, misaligned, or like a brand is maybe trying a little bit too hard. So that's why the biggest risk isn't missing a trend, it's forcing one. So overall, by moving beyond chasing what's popular and instead using trends as a strategic tool, brands can strengthen relevance, credibility, and performance with intention, not impulse. So overall, we're going to be focusing on how trends create pressure, like we mentioned. Social moves fast, and the expectation to activate and participate is higher than ever. But with that being said, not every trend deserves a brand response. So we're going to be looking at relevance as it comes from knowing what aligns with your audience, your brand, and its goals. And then ultimately, the session is about making smarter calls. So we're going to be kind of stepping back and exploring a practical approach for evaluating trend relevance, brand fit, and timing before jumping in. So regrounding ourselves, what is a trend? A trend is a pattern that we see across social media, whether that's a content format, a shared behavior, a conversation, or a cultural moment. As more people participate, these trends shape how content is created and consumed. So creating opportunities for individuals and brands alike to join the conversation in a way that feels natural, authentic, and a little bit less promotional. So ultimately, today's session is built around 3 simple ideas. We're going to be reframing, evaluating, and deciding. So ultimately, shifting from chasing what's popular to using trends with a clear brand purpose. We're going to be evaluating, so using that as a filter, checking audience relevance, brand permission, and timing before deciding to act. And then ultimately deciding, so making that call and explaining the rationale and feel good about whether we are jumping in or whether we're going to be sitting this one out. All right, so audience participation moment. How do you decide if a trend is right for your brand? So quick show of hands, who has been in a meeting where someone has walked in and said, I saw this trending TikTok, how do we get in on this? How do we participate? Yep, totally. So what's interesting is that most teams immediately jump to execution. We start brainstorming how the brand can fit into the trend, instead of asking whether we should be participating in the first place. Do we have a seat at this table? Does this make sense? And arguably, that instinct does make sense. Social moves fast, trends feel urgent, and nobody wants to be the brand that missed a moment. But when trend participation becomes the goal, it's easy to lose sight of what we're actually trying to accomplish in participating. So before we talk about how to evaluate a trend, we need to take a step back and understand the role that trends will play in the first place, because the strongest brands don't use trends as a strategy. Ultimately, they use them as a tool to support the strategy that is been put in place in the first place. So step 1, we're going to be reframing. So reframing the role that trends are playing from fleeting moments to a strategic lever. Ultimately, we're wanting it to support your broader social goals, especially when used with intention. So this is a mindset shift that everything else in today's session builds on. So trends can be incredibly valuable. They can help a brand feel culturally relevant, extend the reach of a message, increase engagement, and sometimes even accelerate the existing strategy. But that's exactly what they are, accelerators. What trends can't do is tell you who your audience is, determine what your brand stands for, or ultimately shape your content strategy. Those decisions need to exist well before a trend even enters the conversation. One of the most common mistakes brands make is allowing trends to drive those content decisions and how we're building our ultimate strategy. A trend starts gaining traction, everyone gets excited, like we talked about, and suddenly the question becomes, how do we get in on this? Instead of why would our audience care if we did jump in on this? How would it resonate? What would they take from it? So put simply, trends can make a strategy work harder, but they can't replace the strategy itself. So as we move through to the rest of today's session, we want you to think of trends as less of a destination and more as a vehicle. So the strategy determines where you're going. A trend is just a way to help you get there. So this visual captures exactly what we're talking about. So when you hear the word trend, obviously we think of things like viral challenges, trending audios, memes, internet slang, etc. These generate a lot of attention really quickly, but they also change really quickly. Some last weeks, some last days, some leave as soon as they arrive. But underneath all of that should sit the foundation of a strong brand, a clear purpose. A clear purpose, a defined audience insight, clear brand values, a recognizable voice, and a long-term strategy overall. The brands that consistently win on social don't build their content around what's trending that week. They use trends to amplify what's already existing and what's already concrete. That's why two brands can participate in the same trend and have vastly different outcomes. One feels relevant and authentic because it is. It's anchored in something real. It resonates with who they are, and it's in alignment. The other one can feel like it's chasing attention or just grasping at low-hanging fruit. So when your foundation is strong, the trends become opportunities to reinforce who you already are. But when your foundation is weak, they start dictating who you're trying to become. And that's a dangerous place for any brand to operate from without a strong standing. So let's look at what happens when a brand uses a trend to support an existing strategy instead of letting the trend drive the strategy. So not sure if anyone saw this one online, but we'll start with the moment here. So Taylor Swift is photographed at a Chiefs game with chicken tenders. This is an example of one of the fan accounts or fan tweets that had gone extremely viral at the time that it happened. So for anyone that can't see, it says Taylor Swift was eating a piece of chicken with ketchup and seemingly ranch. No one would think that that would go viral, but it did. And specifically that phrase, ketchup and seemingly ranch. It took off online. So when the phrase started taking off online, a lot of brands joined that conversation, but Heinz saw something bigger than a viral meme. They saw a cultural moment that was directly connected to their category. Instead of creating a one-off post and moving on, they found a way to participate that felt uniquely Heinz. That execution was timely, playful, and rooted in something that they already had permission to talk about, condiments. That's what makes this example so effective. Heinz wasn't trying to become a part of internet culture for the sake of being relevant. They were using a cultural moment to reinforce an existing position in condiment culture. So the trend created the opportunity, but ultimately the brand's expertise and credibility gave it permission to participate. And that's the important distinction. Plenty of brands saw the same moment. Heinz was one of the few to take it and turn it into something that felt authentic, ownable, and unmistakably tied to the brand. Then another example here of when a trend turned cultural relevance into brand relevance. Around the same time that Gap launched this Better in Denim campaign with Cat's Eye, another denim campaign featuring Sydney Sweeney was dominating headlines for very different reasons. So while American Eagle found itself at the center of a cultural debate, Gap found a way to tap into a culture that felt authentic to both its audience and its brand. It generated a lot of conversation online, and some examples here. I'll read this one out loud because it really hits home the point. Genius, 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 taking it back to the Gap we all knew and loved, tied to music, style, interconnecting culture, American clean, so smart, so familiar, or so new yet so familiar, repackaged with modern sensibility. So this just proves the point that by pairing a cultural obsession, Cat's Eye, denim in the conversation online, with Gap's own heritage, the campaign felt fresh, relevant, and authentically Gap. So it felt true to who they are and their core values. The result wasn't just engagement for engagement's sake. It became Gap's most viral and highly engaged campaign, earning overwhelmingly positive sentiment across social. The key takeaway was that Gap didn't win because Cat's Eye or denim was trending. It won because the trend naturally connected the brand, the audience, and the story that it overall wanted to tell. So we want you to think about the last trend that your team participated in. Don't say it out loud. Just think about it. Let's get some nods when we have something in mind, maybe. Okay. So now ask yourself, if the trend disappeared tomorrow, would your reason for participating still make sense? Perhaps, maybe. Okay, so if the trend disappears and the idea no longer makes sense, the trend was driving the strategy. But if the idea still holds up as the trend disappears, the strategy was clearly driving trend participation and totally made sense to be there. So the challenge is knowing the difference, and that's what we're going to be talking about next.
So that brings us to step 2, which is evaluate. So the question here is, how do we quickly evaluate whether a trend is worth our time, our creative energy, and our brand equity? So first, what we do is we go to the fast fit check. So this is how to know if a trend is right for a brand. First, we start with the target. So would your target audience even care in the first place? Does the trend align with some sort of insight you have about your target audience? And is it a passion area they have or something that they already pay attention to or participate in? After that, we go to brand positioning. So what does your brand stand for? Does it support or conflict with any of these values? Would it feel authentic coming for your brand? Is it something that feels authentic through their voice, their point of view, or even their values? Also, is there maybe a product application or an expertise that you can tie into the trend? And finally, we look at the moment. Can we add anything distinctive that makes it feel uniquely yours to that brand? So the key here is the intersection. When you miss the intersection of trend, target, and brand, it can often fall flat or seem tone deaf or unauthentic. So that last piece, distinctive brand spin, is what keeps us from essentially just copying what everyone else is doing. So the spin test helps us think through whether the brand is adding something of their own. First, is the idea specific to that brand? Like I said before, is there a product, service, or expertise that you can tie into the brand to make it uniquely theirs? Does it add or provide value or perspective? Does it teach, entertain, help, or add some sort of point of view? Also, is it insight-led? Will the audience even relate to it or care about it in the first place? And finally, is it not interchangeable? If another brand were to just slap their logo on top and it was essentially the same, you might want to rethink that trend and maybe try to find a stronger spin. So once you've pressure tested both the fast fit check and the spin test, then the decision-making process becomes a lot easier. So then you can decide when to jump in or when not to jump in. So the 4 main reasons to jump in: 1, is it relevant to your target audience? 2, does it fit with your brand positioning? 3, has the trend not died yet? And is the community still on it and not moved on? And then also, can you add your own unique special spin to the trend? If the execution is, again, the same with just a logo on top, that's not exactly participation, that's more decoration. So let's look at a situation where the fast fit check did exactly what it was supposed to do. A lot of Taylor Swift themes here. So the moment Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce get engaged, she posted on her Instagram, and immediately so many brands take to social media to post engagement-related posts and puns. One of our clients at Hebing, Miller Welding, asked about jumping in. So we ran the fast fit check. Would the audience get the reference? Probably. Would it actually make sense to why they followed Miller Welding in the first place? Probably not. Did the brand even have permission? No. And would they be able to add a unique spin? No. So we passed, and that was the right choice. We ended up putting efforts into content that actually made sense for Miller's audience, and the check protected credibility instead of borrowing impressions from a trend that didn't make sense in the first place. So this is also the same exact trend, but in a way that made sense for a brand. So this is another one of our clients, PetMate. Same exact moment, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce get engaged. This time, PetMate, their brand is rooted in more playful pet humor. So they posted this playful post the same exact day that reimagined the couple through pet toys, translating the moment through pet-parent humor. So they made their own brand-specific take on this cultural moment that felt more like a natural extension of the feed and their own brand personality. So the takeaway here is the trend created the opportunity, but PetMate's brand voice is what made it relevant. Alrighty, we're gonna do another engagement moment. So We're going to have some scenarios, and either raise your hand if you want to jump in or sit out on the trend, or just think about it in your head. What would you do? So first example, a healthcare system wants to jump on a trending meme format. So thinking, obviously, brand relevance, who does your brand stand for, values. Here we're talking about a healthcare system. And this could be any situation. So if you were to come across a trending meme format, would your healthcare brand jump on that trend?
Anyone feeling brave? All right, I guess some questions too that we could ask ourselves are like, does the format align with the trust and credibility that would be required of a healthcare provider? Potentially, potentially not. Can they adapt in a way that still provides value? And then also, is awareness worth the potential risk that might face, just knowing who their audience is, who their target is, et cetera. But
Totally.
cool.
So moving on to the next example. A creator audio trend is taking off, but the sound includes profanity in the original version. Culver's has an idea that fits the trend perfectly. Again, we can just also think in your head, if you were on the Culver's team, do you think that a trending audio with profanity would be something that you guys would hop on for a trend? Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then finally, a bank wants to recreate a viral spend a day with me trend showing employees' daily routines. Yeah. Did I hear a sure? Yeah. Yeah. Here's the password. Maybe not that much detail. So once you evaluate fit, the next step is making the call and standing behind it. So step 3 is all about the decision making. Because the internet moves fast, however, brand trust moves a lot slower. So a one-off trend can have a huge effect on brand perception before an audience even has the chance to get to know you. So the goal is to make the call, explain the rationale, and feel confident either way. So that's where the final decision lens comes in. And when deciding, there's a few things to keep in mind. First of all, timing can be everything. A trend that was popular yesterday might not be popular today. Also consider if your competitors are jumping in on the trend. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should also jump in on the trend, but it is a good opportunity to assess whether it makes sense for your brand as well. And then finally, public reaction. Trends move extremely fast and people think certain things about them. So making sure that you're constantly monitoring where the public perception of that trend is when you're deciding to actually jump in on it. So let's look at another example of when a trend made sense because it amplified who the brand was. So this is Scrub Daddy. If anyone doesn't know, they're the fun little smiling sponges. They hopped on the unhinged brand trend that was going on TikTok and Reels. So they created bizarre content using their sponge mascot. They did funny 4th of July stuff, editing Scrub Daddy as a horror movie. And this actually felt super authentic to their brand, considering a goofy, smiling sponge is their mascot. So it naturally fit with them. It felt playful, added to their kind of weird persona. And the payoff here is that it added a natural way to show their personality. And it works best when it actually amplifies who the brand already is. So this is an example of when speed gets ahead of fit. So a trend that should have stayed in the drafts. The moment here was, I'm sure people remember this because it was recent, but a daredevil couple climbed the Empire State Building and hung a large black banner over the city that read, "When the power of love beats the love of power, the world knows peace." So Loverboy, which is an alcoholic seltzer and tea company, they had the speed to join the trend. And there was actually comments that were like, wow, you were on this very fast. They edited their logo onto the flag, but the fast fit check probably would have slowed down that decision. The meme offered no specific entertainment value for their consumers. And again, like I said, if another brand were to just slap their logo on top and it was essentially the same, it's really not adding any value, which is exactly what they did here. So essentially, the trend felt a little bit forced, a little inauthentic, and there was really no tie to any of their products or expertises or services at all. So the key takeaway here is being fast doesn't beat fit. So the strongest trend participation happens when timing and brand relevance actually work together. So as we wrap, the main things that we want you guys to remember are, first, reframing the role of trends, using them as a lever from fleeting moments to that strategic lever that supports your broader social goals when used with intention. Second, evaluate fit in a fast and repeatable way, using that fast fit check and also the spin test. And then making sure you're building confidence in your decision. And there's a lot of value in explaining the why and rationale behind it and standing behind your decision. And then if there's one idea we want you guys to leave with today, it's that saying no to a trend can be just as strategic as jumping in. Thank you. And then we will open it up for questions, I think. Yes, in the back. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
It's for the video.
Is there a place to monitor trends? Like, is there like a hot trends trendy website that we can go to?
That is a good question. I actually follow a lot of accounts that are constantly like reporting on trends. So that's like the way that I personally am keeping up with trends. I think that also too, just being active on social media is another way, obviously, to be able to know what's happening on social media.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. My primary mode of finding trends would be just being in it myself, I guess. So just using the platforms, making sure I'm staying up to date. But also there are social listening tools too. So if you want to understand a little bit more of what your target audience is looking at, there's a various amount of platforms that can help you also just like type in specific keywords that might be relevant to your brand. And then that'll also populate some more content, more resources that might be a little bit more relevant to what's going on in your world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is following hashtags still a thing?
Yeah, I would say it is still very much a thing. Definitely there has been, I would say, a decrease over the last few years with things being a little bit more oversaturated, but depending on how strategic you're being with those hashtags and the relevance that it has to the content, I think, yeah, they are still very relevant.
Yeah, with hashtags, less is definitely more, and making sure that those hashtags you're using are really the most important keywords that your audience is going to be searching. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
a great call.
If anyone didn't hear that, that question was, are hashtags still relevant?
So I think we had maybe a few more hands. Yes.
Do you have any examples of how joining a trend supported the overall goals of the social media account? Like, was it is it just random purpose? Is that essentially how it functions, or were there sales goals, things like that helps that these trends help support? Can you jump on?
Yeah, I guess one example, like tying it back to the Taylor Swift Heinz example. So apparently Heinz already had a product really similar to seemingly Ranch, but it never went anywhere. I believe it was called Cranch. I think people walked by it and they were like, "Ooh, I don't know what that is. I'm not interested." So initially their sales were extremely low for that product, right? So in stepping into this trend and evaluating it, I think it created an opportunity for them to fill a business gap. So in that sense, when they put that lens on it, it made sense for them to activate on it in this way. And overall, like, of course, product probably carried itself, but I think a huge lift was to do with the fact that it was so relevant due to that online conversation.
For sure.
Yeah, Kat, do you?
So that pet mate example that I used, I think that is a good example of a way to use your products within a trend that feels authentic, but obviously is tied to a cultural moment, because they used two of their products. They used their like fetch football and then that little like cat toy that looked like a feathery woman. So I think that like that personal example, I feel like was a way where we were able to integrate the products into a trend and still promote those two, but in a way that didn't feel salesy and promotional and more fun.
I think too, I'll just give one more example. So for Culver's specifically, the target audience is technically called the chief meal officer. So it's going to be moms within that age range of like, I'd say like 35-ish to 45. So they're going to be the soccer moms. They have a busy schedule. They're constantly moving. They have a kid's schedule to work with. But a lot of the trends that we activate on with that brand is really specific to what's going to resonate with her, right? Like what's going to feel relatable to her. And I remember one of the trends was, it's so weird describing a trend, right? Because like a lot of it's trending audio. But it was like essentially like, I don't know how to explain it.
I'm also trying to
It's
think
the
of
one
which
that
trend you're
Katie had
talking
done with her son, where essentially
Oh.
he was like, his bed was made up as though there was somebody laying in there, and it said like getting ready to go to Culver's or something, and it panned up and it uses trending audio, and it was him like completely decked out in Culver's gear, having a cheese curd in his hand, like ready to go to Culver's. So like in that moment, does it like make sense as like a giant business driver? Not necessarily, but at the end of the day, it resonated with who they wanted it to resonate with. So all in all, that's, I guess, an example specifically tied to Culver's. Yeah. Yes.
So in any particular qualities you might use to identify long-term viability than others, in a general sense, rather than program.
So
That's a good question. Can you repeat it actually, just so I can repeat it back to the audience?
In a general sense, is there any specifics that y'all look for to identify the long-term viability of the trend? In general.
Okay, so are there any specifics that we looked to determine the long-term viability of a trend?
Yeah.
That is a really good question. Honestly, like I said, monitoring engagement, like comments are a really good space to be in, just seeing public perception. Because like I said, trends move so quickly. It is kind of hard to know, like, how long is this going to be relevant for? So I think it is one of those things that you have to stay close to. And also, I think too, looking at your competitors, like if they hopped on that trend, how is their audience reacting to that, and assessing kind of based on that if it's something that is going to be relevant long enough where you can hop into.
I think also using that lens of, if I took this trend away from what everyone else was talking about, would it still make sense for my brand? I feel like that's a really good frame of mind to be in when you're considering longevity. Instead of speaking to something maybe that's like viral on Love Island, right? Like that has a very short time frame. But if it is something that truly makes sense to welding or to the QSR space or something like that, then that tends to feel like it might have a little bit more length and longevity.
Yeah. In the back.
Yeah, my question is based more on recovery. So it has to do with AI. So a few years ago, they asked me to look at Madison College, right? What can we do with an AI program? So all the rest of the technical colleges
Go ahead and do that.
coming up with programs, and we did not. And I couldn't come up with anything at the time because nothing really fit this area. So now we're finally moving on it. we're feeling almost like we're behind the 8 ball. We've moved kind of late, but now we can target our programs specifically to what, the insurance and government agencies in this region are for. However, we're still thought of as lagging behind what the trend actually was. And even though we feel as if we've made the right decision, we can actually address our customers, our audience best now. How do we recover that lost incentive?
Specifically to AI.
Well, I mean, it could be any trend. So a trend has been going on. So the AI coming up with something and reacting to AI has been a trend for years, but we're just now moving on it because we only realized what our audience is asking for. But that audience still sees everyone else who moved on it before us. So how do we recover from that?
Honestly, I don't think it's too late to jump in terms of speaking AI. I think AI moves just as fast as trends. I feel like it's constantly evolving. And I really do think that it's never too late to jump in. And I think with it, intentionality is key. And not just like using it just to use it, like find ways where it fits into your business and can actually like optimize processes and actually make sense for your brand. So I don't really know if this is the right answer, but honestly, I don't think I would do anything differently on your end other than assessing where it makes sense to use it and just kind of jumping in and starting to explore, because the first step really is like just getting into those platforms and starting to explore and asking those questions and just kind of see the kind of responses you get. And like I said, just like finding those specific moments that make sense for the college or the program, and just find ways to make those efficiencies and optimizations as strong as they can be.
Yes, anding. I feel like differentiation is probably the biggest superpower there too. So yes, acting on it and totally like just jumping in, making what you can with what you have. But also if you're wanting to break the clutter and break into the space, I would just really hone in on what would make your voice really unique in that moment so that you can break through and you can stand out a little bit more, even though maybe you are in that recovery mode too.
We have a virtual question. What platform should people be looking towards for trends? If you have limited energy, which platform should they be focusing on for listening?
So the question from online was, what platform should individuals be exploring when trying to find trends and tapping into them? I would say personally, I believe that it depends on where exactly your brand is living on social and where your primary audience is going to be. So if that's like a little bit of a younger demographic or more niche demographic, I would maybe suggest TikTok as a trend resource. But if it's like an older demographic or a little bit more, I guess like wholesome content, DIY content, like things like that, I feel like I would gear a little bit more towards Meta. So I'd look towards the Instagram Reels. I'd look a little bit more closely at Meta Reels or Facebook Reels as well. But Kat, I don't know if you have any other point of view there.
Yeah, I think
depends.
also too, YouTube Shorts is an area that we've been delving into more, and I think that there's a younger audience, but also there is an older audience on YouTube as well. Like you said, like more of that wholesome or DIY content. That's a space that I've been looking to more. But like I said, there's a ton of creators on Instagram who specifically post content about trends. And that is truthfully, I can't even think of the names of these creators off the top of my head, but I follow like 3 or 4 accounts where regularly I'll go and see what are they posting about. Because honestly, I find it as consolidated as possible. It's easy to read through, and it's just easy to engage with.
Absolutely. I think you've been waiting for a little bit, so,
Sure.
okay.
How do you know when like you just missed the window for the trend? I mean, assuming that your competitors gotten great response from the trend, how do you know when that conversation is just missed?
I feel like, again, with that same lens, like if you took the trend away, does it make sense still? I think that like speaks to the longevity piece, but it also speaks to the timeliness of it, because if it can still resonate and still feels relevant, I would say it's fair to act on, as long as, of course, it's not like 6 months later. I think it's just a little bit more of like a intuitive check too, along with that lens.
Yeah, and like this is pretty self-explanatory, but if the trend is specifically tied to a cultural moment or let's say a holiday, like obviously if there's a 4th of July trend, you're not going to do it on the 5th of July. But I think that assessing the specific moment is kind of how you can then make the decision of, is it now relevant for me to hop in on this trend? I feel like for like that seemingly ranch one, I mean, people are always going to be eating ketchup and ranch. That makes sense and it's relevant for a long period of time. But if it was like a limited edition or yeah, a very fleeting moment, then I think that is where you might need to assess whether it makes sense timing wise.
Over here.
Decision-making process, like whether or not you jump on the trend now. Is it like a team meeting together, or is it like one decision? Or you guys have like the whole system like grading the trend based on like the previous made documents, like what the brands made, brand names.
Yeah. So essentially he was asking about the decision-making process and what that looks like going into deciding on whether or not to jump on a trend. If there's a larger team involved or if there's historical data that's kind of brought to the table in order to make that decision. So for us specifically, I guess the way that we run through it is we bring something to the table, we offer it up to the larger group just to make sure that we have other experts in the space weighing in on it, seeing if it feels relevant. And then ultimately, this is also brought to the client too, for them to understand like, okay, you live and breathe in this brand every single day. Does this feel like it resonates with you and where you're wanting the program to go? And then, of course, we're applying all of the things that we've learned today as well prior to sending it to clients. And then when they come back and they're like, oh, I'm not entirely sure. Why do you think this or that? We have reasoning to back that up and valid reasoning as far as like, okay, we did put a lot of thought into this. This is kind of the strategic direction that we think that this could take. But yeah, absolutely. Historical data is brought to the table too. We do a lot of reporting, whether that's period by period, quarter by quarter, or annual reporting, just to understand like specifically what kinds of content is resonating with our audience. So if that's like more POV style or strictly trend-based, or like, for example, a lot of our brands perform really well when there's a human element tied to the content. So whether that's a face tied to the content or literally just a hand interacting with the product, that can sometimes resonate a little bit higher than something that is like strictly product-based. So feels a little bit more technical, a little bit more cold. So we just take a lot of those pieces into consideration and of course consult with other experts in the area as well as the client too. Yeah.
It's like, so I feel like because they involve a lot of teams coming together, that means that there's a lot of frictions for the decision making.
Yes.
Is there any moment you like thinking like, is there any better way like pinpoint to the process of making decisions that you may want to improve the whole process?
Yeah. So essentially, the follow-up question was whether or not there's friction when there are multiple teams involved in that decision-making process. I don't know if you want to take this one or if you want me to hop in.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, there tends to be a little bit of friction, but not necessarily in a way that feels counterintuitive. It's definitely, especially when we're thinking about putting something out online, things circulate so quickly. And we want to make sure that we're making the smartest choice that we can possibly make and make sure that it aligns from all angles. So while yes, there might be friction, I think it helps benefit the brand ultimately. So navigating like, okay, what are all the corners that I might not have thought of in order to make this decision, or what are the different lenses that it could be perceived through. So ultimately, it is a super helpful tool. And yes, it can take a little bit longer to get something out the door, but I think we all have like a mutual understanding of things are moving quickly. Like we do need to think strategically, but we also do need to move quickly on whether we are going to jump in or whether we're going to sit out.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, our job is obviously to speak for the brand and have the brand best intention at heart. So really, when we're assessing these things, it's a good exercise for us as a team, but also at the end of the day, we all are aligned under doing what's best for the brand and what represents them in the best way and meets their goals. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Right here.
Is there like a warning, signs that you should look for if something has potential to be a trend? Kind of like the weather, like the tornado, except for trends.
nice. A tornado for trends.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say just being active and monitoring and understanding whether or not the conversation, the buzz is getting louder. And then also just seeing how quickly that momentum is building, right? So like in that moment where we're like, okay, we're scrolling through whatever content platforms that we are, if we're seeing a lot of the same content resurfacing or the same trending audio or the same meme format, I think that's an opportunity to be like, okay, pause. We see it climbing up. Let's assess the situation. Do we feel like it's worth jumping in on? And if so, then we make that leap and then hopefully the trajectory goes up. But ultimately it is trying to find that middle ground of like, before it's taken off too far. I mean, if you're at the top of the mountain, you can still go ahead and shoot your shot. Things move quickly. But ultimately just trying to find it as soon as we can and kind of assessing the value that it has.
Yeah, social monitoring is really important there because obviously seeing if people are engaging, sharing, commenting, but again, making sure that you're timely with it is a really good way to assess that.
Absolutely.
I kind of taking off of that, is there a pathway that you see like trends are most popular? Like they started TikTok and then they kind of like work their way to Instagram and then to Facebook, like for YouTube, or do you see like if they started there and that's kind of the peak, but then if they start to get into Instagram, that means they're kind of on the way out, or like or do they have their own like trends because it's just different audiences, or is this, which way do you see them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like majority of trends that I see do start TikTok side. I don't know that I necessarily would say that once they get to Reels, that means they're like on the downfall. But I do think a lot of like the trending, like audios and like those meme type trends, like the more entertaining ones do typically come from TikTok, but a lot of them do also come from Instagram Reels as well. So it kind of depends also just like, again, TikTok has a slightly different audience than an Instagram. So there might be a little bit more like funny, entertaining type of content trends that will come from TikTok versus Instagram. Although Instagram does obviously similarly have types of entertaining content. What do you see usually?
Kind of both, honestly. So I feel like a lot of brands will repurpose trends from TikTok to Instagram Reels. But I also do think that there's a point of differentiation in the two platforms, and a lot of what the like different trends are resurfacing on both. So yes, of course, the meme, a little bit more quick, a little bit more edgy content is a little bit more of what's trending on TikTok. And then Instagram feels like it's a little bit more of that relatable, wholesome content. But that's not to say that one can't resonate on the other as well. So I think it's just important to keep an eye on both and where they're both going and kind of what the conversation is.
So my algorithm is mostly people falling down. That's my spend most time. So you said that you have, for different clients, you're going to have sort of different algorithms based on who you're following and interacting with. Kind of back to the question, would you share some, because they're not going to necessarily hit the trends if you're not my first organization. I'm not going to know about campus, but do you have can you suggest some specific people that you follow that are paying attention? You said that you follow.
Yeah, if you give me your email, I will send them to you because I genuinely cannot think of
Yeah,
I'll
we
put
can
them in
add
the
to the
recap
slide.
because I genuinely can't think of the account names, but there are like 3 specific people that I follow who are constantly like carousels of here's what's going on this week on social. And it's really, really nice because I like the like little bite-sized way to evaluate. So I will get that for you.
I guess like with trying to get new clients to do like to jump on trends on social without having much historical activity themselves. Like how do you just people to buy into like, oh, we should do a trending thing? Like largely just scared to do anything on social. Just like focus. Work with our audience.
Yeah, I have personal experience with that. One of my clients has definitely been more slow to wanting to jump on trends. A lot of the content we do is more brand aligned, product aligned, service aligned. However, I would say with the clients that are more resistant to that, it's kind of a slow dipping your toes into. I think a lot of times we bring ideas for trends to our clients and they will immediately shoot them down. But honestly, it's kind of just about keep coming back to them with more and more and more. And I've noticed this specific client over time has gotten more warmed up to the idea of it. And also too, like it's about finding that specific trend. Like there's obviously some trends that really just don't make sense or they're just a little bit out there, but there are trends that come through that are simple enough where a brand can add a specific element that ties to their brand specifically that makes sense, isn't saying too much or too little. And I think just like the gentle encouragement and honestly just the not giving up and keep coming to your brand with more and more ideas because I've noticed that they slowly have kind of hopped on the train more and more.
I will say also specifically to the manufacturing space or any like trade space, I think your best bet is going to be quantitative data on why, so like, of course, social is to an extent qualitative, right? It's like a conversation that's being started. It's a community that's being built. But I also think that when you're shifting into their mindset and kind of what their goals are, you have to understand like they want to know what the ROI is going to be, and they want to know like we're not going to look dumb, right? Like specifically when I was in a previous life working freelance, I was working with a construction company, and so when I first came aboard, they were like, why Instagram? Like, that doesn't make sense. It's a social media platform. And I'm like, okay, but let me tell you why. And you have to come to the table with like proof points, essentially, of like, this is what competitors are doing. This seems silly on paper when I say it out loud to you, but then when I show you the proof in the pudding, it is working, right? It is working for someone. So just being able to come to the table with just real data to back up your decision. And I think that'll be helpful too. That just cut me out, but thank you.
Thank you both very much. We will be asking for those accounts and we'll put those in the recap blog for the event. If you're not signed up for our email list, come talk to me and I'll help you figure that out. We do have our next upcoming events on our website to sign up for. Please make sure you get your tickets. Enjoy Forward Fest. We have Scott from Starting Block in the corner there. He will be giving, and Beth. Wow, right there. They will be giving tours of the co-working space. If you would like to get a tour, go chat with them. Otherwise, have a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you for joining us.